there are quite a few new aspects to Anne Boleyn, some new theories that are emerging, and the most important, the most striking thing I think about her is the fact that you could call her a feminist of her time, and that's I would have said, Anne Boleyn. Let's start at the beginning. Anne Boleyn is nowadays seen almost as a celebrity. And I ran a sort of poll on Facebook not that long ago and said, why are people so fascinated by Anne Boleyn? She's almost become the new Richard III. You're not supposed to even criticize her. A lot of people have very romanticized views. And I think a lot of that derives from the television series The Tudors, for example. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people came back to me and responded and said, because we see her as a feminist icon. I thought, well, that's completely anachronistic. And I was saying this not long after, when I was approaching writing Anne's novel, the novel about Anne, to the historian and author Sarah Griswold, who's a good friend of mine. And she was researching a book called Game of Queens, and it's about the women who ruled in medieval Europe.
And I'm going to plug an interview I did with her on the show as well. So,
well, you know something about the background to this then, because, she has a marvellous approach to history, almost lateral thinking. And her insights are unparalleled. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I said to her, this is anachronistic, this view of Anne as feminist icon. She said, well, actually, it's not too wide of the mark, because it's true. In England, and we look at Anne basically from an English perspective, there was no feminist movement. But in Europe, right from the 15th century onwards, we had what's called the querelle des femmes, the women debate, we could call it. Mm. And it's a debate that's originated in Italy and in France with Christine de Pizan at the beginning of the 15th century, gathered momentum towards the end of the 15th century, and was one of the hot topics in Europe, in European cultural thought, at the time of Anne Boleyn's youth, when she was serving at the courts of Margaret of Austria and Marguerite of Navarre. And these ladies were both great proponents of the querelle des femmes. They both, were outstanding examples of women who, in their writings and in their interests, advocated feminine equality. Mm. So if you look at Anne within this context, and she was at a very impressionable age when she served Margaret of Austria and must have become familiar with Christine de Pizan, and also when she was older when she served Marguerite of Navarre. But I think it was this that made her stand out and seem so exotic at the English court when she came there, not just the French fashions, the French manners, the fact that she spoke French, but the fact that she had these very advanced ideas which hadn't yet really hit England. They did later on in the Renaissance, but not at this time. Sure. So that's the most startling thing that came out of it. I was very struck by the Anne and Reform, the banned book she made Henry VIII read in 1528, some years before the Reformation actually happened. They are the seeds of the Reformation, and it's her vision that helped to shape it. And that shows how enormously influential she was. Mm. She's also the first modern Queen of England. She broke the mould. She distanced herself from the medieval ideals of queenship. Mm-hmm. Catherine of Aragon is the last great medieval English queen, taking in after the footsteps of her mother-in-law Elizabeth of York, who was the perfect medieval queen. Although Catherine failed in that she failed to bear the king a son, which was a queen's first duty. Yeah. There's another thing that intrigues me about Anne Boleyn, that in her last confession, she swore on the salvation of her soul she had never offended with her body against the king. Why did she qualify that? Mm. Why did she not say, it could have been in contrast to, as opposed to plotting his death, but why did she say with her body? And it led me to wonder, had she offended in some other way? Mm. Because there are some hints in the sources. I'm certainly not saying that the charges against her were justified. There are some hints in the sources there could have been something between her and one of the men accused with her, not her brother.
Right. Interesting. So, given all of that, I was going to ask if your opinion of Anne has changed through writing this, and it sounds like it does. And I remember last year when we spoke, we actually talked about this anachronistic view of Anne as a feminist, and so it's really interesting to hear you talk about her in this context right now. And so, are there any other ways that your opinion of her has changed in writing the book?
I can see how much more powerful she was and how much more influential. But of course, in the end, marriage did it for her. Because all those long years when she was the king's mistress, and I'm talking about in the courtly sense, when she had mastery over him as her servant, and he was happy to play that role, and he was still waiting, almost certainly waiting to consummate their relationship. She had so much influence, but once she married him, he went into conventional mold. He was the husband. She was subject to him. He had dominion over her. You can see this problem they have, that she's sort of fighting against this. She's going on the same way she has always done, and now he expects her to be a submissive, fruitful wife.
Right.
And in the end, of course, her biology defeated her, because she lost all her sons. Mm-hmm. She probably lost 3 of them.
Yeah.
And that's her tragedy. And her tragedy in a way, I say her tragedy in a way because in some way she was very unsuitable as a queen consort. She's quite unique, actually. She doesn't really set a pattern for future queen consortship. She's a one-off on her own, because Jane Seymour went back into the traditional mold, and Catherine Parr, she argued with Henry on religious matters, but Anne is quite unique. She's the first. I think it's because she became queen and because she had these very strong reformist ideals and tried to push them through. Yeah. So she was very influential, and we are living with in a country that's been shaped by Anne's vision. Mm. So yes, I mean, I can see her. I can see her power. I mean, if for Catholics, obviously, they wouldn't see her in the same way. I try to keep an objective view. I'm Church of England, but not strongly. But I can see her in that way. I don't think she. On the other hand, we have the damning testimony of Eustache Chapuis, and there's been a lot of research done recently on Chapuis. And he was close to events. He was in the confidence of many people who were close to events. And as David Starkey points out, he cites his sources. We can evaluate them. Mm. And he didn't hate Anne to begin with. So obviously he didn't approve of her position and what she was doing. Right. But I think that his concerns for Catherine of Aragon and for her daughter Mary, against whom Anne was quite venomous on many occasions, I think they were genuine concerns. Right. And for anyone who wants to portray Anne in a sympathetic light, they have to get over the challenge of Chapuis' testimony. Mm. And it is borne out by other things. I mean, her cruelty to Mary is borne out by a letter she herself wrote.
And what letter was that? Tell me, for those.
It's a letter where she says, I think it was give her a good beating or something for the cursed bastard she is to the woman looking after her. Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, that letter corroborates what Chapuis is saying. And in 1535, which was a terrible year for those who were on the opposite side of the fence, this is the year of many executions of people defying the king, not refusing to take the oath of supremacy, which acknowledges his marriage to Queen Anne. Moore and Fisher went to the scaffold. Carthusian monks suffered in about 3 batches of martyrs. And the Nun of Kent had been the first blood shed over the great matter in 1534. And it's this year when Anne becomes her threats against Catherine and Mary are becoming worse. She's urging Henry to have them executed. And of course, Henry's in a difficult position, naturally. I mean, he's his own daughter. Right. And although he's displeased with her, he never took that step. He threatened it, he blustered. But a lot of Henry was bluster, actually. If you look at all the threats he posed during these years, he didn't carry out very many of them. And when he did, everybody was quite shocked.
So do you actually think she really was a danger to Catherine?
Yes, I do think she was. There was because I think she was very insecure, and I talked to my editor about how to portray her sympathetically. But and I said this is going to be very, very difficult because of this, this evidence how she was with Catherine and Mary. And my editor said, "Well, try to see why she behaved the way she did." And that gave me the key. And so the book is written wholly from Anne's point of view. So you have a chance to get inside your subject's head when you do that. And I think the root of it all is insecurity and fear.